We talked about DXPs earlier. Now we're going to talk about portals. And typically portals, for whatever reason, portals are usually pretty bad. So we're going to talk about how do we take a bad portal experience and turn it into a good portal experience. But before we get there, I know you all invested. I haven't updated my pants. No lie. I got off the stage. I checked my phone, and I had an email from Bird Dogs. And they did exactly what I said. They refunded my shipping and gave me a coupon for $25 off. So I'm happy again. You guys can all show up at Bird Dogs. Highly recommend them. Good stuff. Stretchy pants. You can squat in them. They're great.
Also turn off your phone.
Yes, that's the other part too. That's kind of creepy. I'm not gonna lie. That was the timing there was something. But portals. All right. Who here has had a bad portal experience? Like probably all of us. And when I talk about portals as part of this, I'm going to talk about kind of any logged in experience. So it could be a customer portal. You're a customer of some organization. You log in, you manage your account and orders and things like that. It could be a member experience. Maybe you're an association. You have members that sign up. Maybe you sell things to customers, and they become members and have access to content and training and things like that. It could be that. It could be employee portals like intranets. A lot of us have HR portals where you can log in and manage your time off, manage one-on-ones, reviews, all that sort of thing. So when I talk about portals, I talk about kind of all of those types of things. So I'm sure we've all had some pretty bad portal experiences, but just kind of like level set of what a bad portal experience could look like. And to make sure I'm not invited back next year, we're going to talk about the Telerik portal. If you're a customer or a partner, if you ever had to log in here to find anything, and maybe it's me, but I can never find my damn licenses. I don't know if anyone else can, especially if you manage multiple licenses, because we have like 20 licenses, 30 licenses we manage. So to find the silvertech.com one, I'm clicking 15 times to find the right license. And then from there, I still can't find it for some reason. So there's that. But then there's also, if you want to open a support ticket, it's a different portal. So you have to log out of that first portal, log into this portal with a different username and password to enter a support ticket. And I think this is Salesforce Community Cloud, which is just terrible in itself, so there's that. And then finally, if you're a partner, there's a third portal, and with a different username and a different password. So in an ideal situation, progress, this would be one portal, and when I logged in, my navigation would adjust to my role. If I'm a partner, I see partner things. If I'm a customer, I see customer things. If I need support, I can find support and things like that. So big opportunity here to kind of improve that. And it's important. And why are portals important? There's a number of different reasons. Again, if someone's coming to your portal, they're doing it with an intent to do something. If you think about it, they're not going there for like a website to browse content and learn more about you. They probably have an intent. They're trying to find information. They're probably trying to do something. So creating that consistent, engaging portal experience is important because attrition is expensive. If you have a customer and part of your way of servicing that customer is through that portal, keeping them happy is a lot easier than trying to find a new customer to replace that customer you lost. So that's a big thing there. It can also help with cost reduction. A lot of times these portals are all about self-service. So if someone can go on that portal and do something themselves, they're not calling into your customer service. They're not calling customer service reps. They're doing it on their own, and it's not costing you any money, which is a good thing. And then finally, it's really a data goldmine if you think about it. You have tons of information on these customers, these members. I'm not going to use employees for this situation, but on these members of the portal that you can use to kind of cross-sell, upsell, look at those audiences and find other audiences that look like them out in the world for new customers and that sort of thing. So there's a number of reasons why you would want to have a good portal experience. So when I think about that, portals, they're a little bit different than websites when it comes to kind of creating them, designing them, the customer experience around them. They're a little bit more operational than most websites, I would say. So when I think about kind of how to create a good customer experience around portals, I think more about like digital transformation and how do you transform your operations to provide those better experiences. And I also think of kind of a report Forrester did, it's a couple years ago now, but I think it's still very applicable when it comes to digital transformation. And they really identified kind of 4 key points to think about when transforming operations, especially from a customer experience standpoint. And the first one is easy. It's digital experiences, right? Deliver easy, effective, emotional customer experiences. I think that's, I don't have to expand there. I think we all know what that kind of means. The second one is digital operations, and it's focus operations on things customers value. And I think that's a little bit different because I think a lot of times when organizations think about digital transformation in operations, they think kind of internally versus externally. They think about, how do I make my company more efficient and productive so we can save money? How do I make my supply chain more efficient? How do I, reduce headcount and automate things? And Forrester's saying, no, when it comes to customer experience, focus more outside in. What do customers value around operations, and then focus on those things. So if you're a bank and think about what operations customers value, it's, maybe it's signing up for a new account, maybe it's transferring money, depositing money, getting money. So focus on those types of things. If you're higher ed, what are people focused on? It's probably, applying, maybe transferring, maybe it's dropping classes, adding classes, that sort of thing. So really focus on those types of things. And then fourth is digital innovation. I think this is kind of the most important one. And then what they're saying here is you want to spend your time and money and innovate at that intersection of operations and customer experience, because that's where you're going to get your most bang for your buck when talking about these types of things. And again, when I think about that, it's like, okay, so if I'm a bank, I want to innovate at that intersection of, how do people, manage their account in the portal, in the app, and things like that. If I'm higher ed, again, how do I innovate where customer or students, prospective students are trying to apply, and that sort of thing. And when I try to think of like bigger examples, I go back to Netflix again, and not Netflix of 2025, but more of Netflix of like 1999. If you think back to 1999, and most of you probably are fine. If you wanted to rent a movie in 1999, you didn't just open up your TV and watch a movie. It was an event. It's Friday night. I'm leaving work. I probably pick up my phone, call into a pizza place to order a pizza or something, because you couldn't go online and order pizza. They didn't have portals. And then on the way home, I'd stop at Blockbuster. I'd go in, and it's 1999. I'm trying to go in there and hopefully get the latest new release, Matrix or Terminator 2 or something. It's probably not there because someone else already got it. So I'm grabbing whatever I get. I get up to the counter. I pay my late fees from last week because I didn't return the movies on time. Get those movies, grab my pizza, I go home and watch them. And Netflix kind of looked at that and said, okay, that customer experience isn't great. And then they looked at kind of the operations of it. And from an operations standpoint, Blockbuster probably had hundreds or thousands of brick and mortar stores, right? That had rent and utilities and employees filling them up. They had to ship all of the merchandise to those stores so people could, rent it and things like that. And they said, how do we innovate, again, at that intersection of operations and customer experience? And in hindsight, it's easy and brilliant at the same time, but they're like, we don't need any of this. We'll create a portal. You can log in. There's no late fees. You pay your $9.99 a month. You get unlimited movies. You create your backlog. You go in and say, okay, these are the 50 movies I want to see. And as you return them, they send you a new one, and everyone's happy, and Blockbuster goes out of business. The whole industry's gone, and Netflix rules the world. And then amazingly, they did it again like 10 years later when they kind of reinvented themselves, and now it's all streaming and DVDs are gone. So that's kind of what like that real innovation looks like. Obviously, we're not innovating at that scale in most of our organizations, but it's really about looking at that cross-section of experiences and operations and saying, what can we do better to improve customer experiences? And then finally, we have digital ecosystems, and that's, focus on the partners and platforms that are going to help you get there. And that's a lot about kind of what I talked about last time. Find those composable systems and the partners that can help you support those, and use those to kind of build your portal ecosystem. That's a lot of stuff to do. So how do we actually tackle something like this, right? And earlier I already used kind of that crawl, walk, run analogy, so I couldn't do that again. So now we're going to kind of go on a digital roadmap tour. We're going to climb the mountain of customer experiences, right? We're going to try and find that peak customer experience. But before we get to the peak, we have to kind of, solidify our base, and that is, creating engaging and frictionless portal experiences. And from there, we've kind of earned the right to work on, integrated and personalized experiences, and then we can try and, get to the top of the peak and work on AI and agentic-driven experiences. But first and foremost is engaging and frictionless, and that is really kind of recognizing that users come to your portal with an intent to do something, right? They're not just browsing a website. We need to make that intent effortless and engaging so that they'll come back and do it again. And again, I don't know if I'd consider Amazon a portal, but it kind of is. There's an app, you log in, you can manage your account and stuff like that. But I don't know if they could have made it any easier to purchase things anymore. Like, you don't even have a cart anymore. You just go in, it's a big orange button that says buy now, you click it, and the next morning it's there on your doorstep. It's kind of, they made it as easy as possible, and that's kind of how we have to model all of our experiences. So when I think about engaging and frictionless, I think about an analogy that one of our designers used to use when talking about customer experiences. And this is a stretch, and now that I'm saying it out loud, it's a little weird, but like, the kitchen's the portal of your home, right? It's where you go to get things done, whether it be cooking dinner, entertaining family, and things like that. And if you look at this kitchen, it's a little dated. If it's yours, I apologize. But it's still functional from a bare bones perspective. I have cabinets I can put my food in. I have a refrigerator I can put my perishables in. I have a freezer for the frozen goods and things like that. I can cook on my stovetop. I have an oven and microwave. Where's the? Oh yeah, that's an old phone. That's an old photo apparently. There's a table where we can sit down and eat. So it's from a bare bones perspective, it's a functional kitchen. It's gonna work as our portal, right? But if you look a little bit deeper, that functionality kind of cracks a little bit. If I was in a wheelchair, it's probably not accessible. I'm not gonna be able to get in and out of there. If I have more than 2 people in there, one washing dishes, one cooking, it gets a little tight. Again, it's not very accessible. Probably also not great for entertaining if I have a lot of guests over and things like that. So if I was gonna redesign this from a functionality standpoint, it might look like this. It's obviously more aesthetically pleasing, but from a customer experience standpoint, it functions a lot better. If I'm in a wheelchair, I have a lot more room to get around, easier to do that. It's much more open for entertaining. I can have conversations with people. If I'm cooking dinner, my wife can kind of sit at that breakfast bar and have a glass of wine. We can have a conversation. It's done much better than the last one from a customer experience standpoint, which is really important. If we apply that same principle to portals now, this is a My Account portal from a customer we have called Palmer Gas and Oil. This is what it looked like before we got it. Again, from a functionality standpoint, it gets the job done. I can log in, I can see my account information, I can pay my bills, I can request deliveries and services and stuff like that. But upon a redesign, now it's much more accessible. It works on mobile now, it works on tablets. It's easier to find information, got some iconography and that navigation to kind of draw people in and things like that. It just works a lot better than the previous one did. Same with intranets. National Fuel is a utility out of New York. They came to us, they had an old, I didn't have a picture of the old one, but I believe it was SharePoint, which does enough. SharePoint's a terrible intranet. Fine for sharing documents, terrible intranet. So we built them a new one on top of Sitefinity. Again, it's much more engaging. It has that personalized kind of welcome message, has some content there, has their application, so that's a customizable thing. They can log in and pick which applications they want quick access to. Again, making that experience a little bit more engaging and frictionless, which is what's important. So that's that first base camp. Once we've kind of mastered that frictionless piece, we can earned our way to working on connecting all the different parts in the ecosystem and tailoring the portal to that individual. This happens to be a portal called Actors Equity. It's kind of not a great picture, but Actors Equity is an association where all of the play actors on like Broadway and in New York and stuff like that their union is a member of that association. And this is where they would log in to kind of manage all of their benefits as part of being that union. But more than that, this is where they would go if they wanted to apply to be in another play. So all of the play auditions run through this application. So essentially, if there's a new Hamilton coming out and I'm an actor and I want to audition for one of the roles in that play, I've never seen it, so I don't know what they're called. I should have looked that up. But I would come in here, I'd find when the auditions are happening, and I'd get myself in a queue and get that audition locked up, and then all the information would travel through here. All the data is managed behind the scenes in Microsoft Dynamics. That's where the actual people working inside Actors Equity are managing everything, but all of the actors are working through this portal in order to get essentially their jobs done every day. Going back to Palmer Gas and Oil, this is also all driven by integration. So they have a vertical specific CRM tool called Ignite. It's housing all of the customer data. So when I log in here and see that I have a balance of $100, I'm signed up for some contracts and things like that. All that data is coming from their CRM tool to drive the UI, but it's also driving personalization. So if you look on the right-hand side there, all of those ads or calls to action rather are based on my account information. So if I didn't have a payment plan or like a price control plan or anything like that, I'd get an ad for one of those there. If I wasn't already signed up for paperless billing, I'd get an ad for that. So it's all kind of personalized to me. The widgets and stuff change as well. So if I'm a propane customer versus an oil customer versus a diesel customer, all that UI is going to change based upon the context around me, which is obviously important for tailoring it to the individual. Next up is also once you start connecting the ecosystem, you can kind of get to that operations piece and self-service and how you reduce costs internally and things like that. When this portal went live a couple of years ago, customers could go in and sign up for like payment plans. So I want to pre-buy all of my oil or sign up for a price assurance plan so the price of propane never goes above $2.99, whatever that might be. And that was been working great. They wanted to add the ability to sign up for service plans. So I could pay a flat fee, maybe $299 a year, to cover my home heating, my furnace. That would cover my my annual tune-up, and then I would get priority service if it ever went down, had issues. I get 20% off service and parts and things like that. And they wanted people to sign up for those. So we built that into the entire system. Someone come in, pick which service plan they wanted, which locations it's going to apply to, because if I have multiple homes or I'm a landlord, I might be managing multiple locations in here. And then it's going to generate that contract with all of my information. I can pay for it, and then it's going to email it out to my email. But the key here is the first month we implemented this, they had 30 people sign up for these plans, which on an average price of $300 to $400, that's $9,000 to $12,000 in annual recurring revenue in that first month. On top of that, they did it through the portal, so they weren't calling in to the customer service rep and taking up time there to do that as well. On top of that, someone can write in the portal, if they're not even a Palmer customer, sign up to become a customer, enter all their information, tell them what type of heat or oil they have, whether it's oil or propane. It'll do a credit check, approve them, and then send all that information to the CRM to sign them up for as a customer. And then it's going to email the service team that they have to go out and check that person's propane tank, oil tank to finalize the sign up. They're averaging about 300 to 400 customers every year through that online sign up, which again is saving them, they said, on average 45 minutes to an hour for each customer. So again, thousands of dollars in savings because people can do this online versus having to call into the company, which is huge for them. So that's kind of now we've got kind of personalized and connected. Now we've kind of earned the right to work on that AI and agentic experiences. Before I go there, this is kind of a project we did last year. So before this, you could log in and kind of see your deliveries over the course of the year. But I noticed, I'm an actual propane customer myself, and I noticed they have on the propane tanks themselves at everyone's house, there's a monitor that every day is sending the current reading of that tank to Palmer so they know when they have to send a tank out to fill it back up. But if you have that reading every day, now you can start to see how much propane people are using every day. So we do a lot of work with the University of New Hampshire. We sponsor a lot of like R&D and capstone projects through them. So last year I thought it'd be fun to essentially give the students all the access to that data and have them kind of build up this UI for me. I told them I want a UI where someone can go in, see how much propane I'm using, on a daily basis, monthly basis, yearly basis. And then I also want to overlay kind of weather data. So I can now look and see, okay, month of February, I can see the average temperature per day and how much propane use I was actually using. Once they finished that, we got a little bit more creative and said, okay, well, a lot of people have like Nest thermostats and Ecobee thermostats with all that programmatic data on there. Can we upload that data in there and see that as well? So now they overlaid essentially what my thermostat is set at, what the temperature outside was, and how much propane I'm actually using every day. So they did that last year. It was pretty cool. And it's nice because someone can come here now and kind of look at and kind of deduce, how much propane I'm using based upon internal temperature, external temperature, and things like that. But with AI and agentic experiences, we can push that information to them. They don't have to go there and try and figure it out themselves. We can do that proactively. So this year's project that they just started last week is to basically figure out how to expose all that data to an MTP server, and then the AI agent on the actual portal, when someone logs in, can essentially go and look, analyze that data, and then prompt the person and say, hey, Derek, did you know when you set your thermostat to 3 degrees lower for 8 hours per day, you can save an average of $2 a day? And start to push that information to them. And then we can take it a step further and look at all their service history. Because again, we have access to all of that data in those connected systems. And I can look at it and say, hey, Derek, you spent $700 in service last year. Did you know you could save money by signing up for a service plan? It would include your tune-up, and you get 20% off all your parts and service and things like that. So those are the types of things we're working on today with AI and trying to make that portal experience a little bit better. If we apply that same thinking to kind of that intranet, I don't know about your intranets, but I can never figure out how to request time off. It's a pain in the ass for some reason. I don't know why. Probably. And then half the time is not even, sometimes I can find how to request it off. I can never find the UI to see what I've already requested off. Because a lot of times I'm like, oh, I need next Monday off. Did I already request it off? And I can never find it. It'd be great if I can go into my intranet, go to a chatbot and say, hey, chatbot, how much PTO time do I have left? It'll tell me how much time I have left and say, hey, did I request next Friday, October 17th off? And it will say, no, you didn't. And I'd say, well, can you do that? And it'll just do it for me. That took all of 30 seconds versus me digging around the portal to figure out what that actually looks like. So lots of opportunity for AI to kind of drive these interconnected experiences, which would be great. Another one I was thinking about around the intranets is that, I don't know if that's still a thing anymore, but when I was a young lad and I had my first job, a big thing back then was every time you got like your annual increase, they told you to kind of bump up your 401k. You're going to get an extra $100 a month. Why don't you put half of that in your 401k? So it'd be really cool if, as part of the intranet, it could recognize, hey, you got a promotion last week. Congratulations. Did you know if you add an extra 1% to your 401k, you'll have an extra $200,000 when you retire? Really, that kind of proactive recommendations to your employees could go a long way. That said, one of the things Lino talked about is that kind of human in the loop thing. I think if we do start doing things like that, it's key to recognize situations where maybe AI shouldn't handle it. If someone's in that chatbot and asking about bereavement leave or something like that, maybe it just stops, notifies HR. HR can reach out with that human touch and that sort of thing. Same thing with like complex medical questions. If people are asking specific questions about insurance plans and things like that, again, maybe that's where the AI stops. That human in the loop kind of takes over and it has that more kind of personal, empathetic approach. So to recap, if you want to hit peak portal experiences, you have to follow the digital roadmap off the mountain and start engaging frictionless, then go with connected and personalized, and then finally agentic and AI driven. That's all I have.
So if I understand correctly, based on the presentation and the previous one, the portal requires three main elements, at least from what I understood from your presentation. It's authentication, authorization, security.
Yeah.
Then operations and integrations as feature set. And it's very key to have like a very good UI, UX based on the business or the vertical that this portal is covering. But to get to the foundation of that, in order to pick a platform, or maybe you might go custom fully, what is your mindset of selecting a platform to actually build a portal? Because if we're talking about content management, maybe like a traditional CMS system that just edits content, it's not the right tool to use. So what is your mindset when you're picking a platform to actually build a portal?
Yeah, that's a good question. So all three portals I showed do happen to be on Sitefinity. And I think the reasoning behind a lot of them is that the roles and permissions in Sitefinity is pretty strong. So for Palmer, for example, there's a whole admin portal behind the scenes. If I log in as an actual Palmer employee, I see a completely different UI based on my role. If I'm an administrator, I can manage oil pricing, propane pricing. If I'm just a customer service rep, I can impersonate customers and things like that, but I can't see pricing and create contracts and stuff like that. So a big part of picking the platform for me is the power of the roles and permissions, and then changing the UI and the personalization based upon those roles. So that was big for us. Another piece of it for them was they wanted the ability to again, personalize that homepage. So an oil customer versus a propane customer, a customer already signed up for rewards or pricing contracts. They wanted to be able to personalize, and obviously Sitefinity supports that type of thing, so that was important to them. So for me, those were kind of some of the key ones. I'm trying to think of some other ones. The fuel one, I can't remember why we picked Sitefinity for that one, specifically for the intranet. Actors Equity, we picked it again for the roles-based thing and ease of integration with Dynamics. So kind of took the whole ecosystem into account.
So that being said, there is still some kind of a separation between the traditional CMS and something more that you get from the platform.
Well, for us, it's yes, yeah, because it's supporting personalization, role-based authentication, all that sorts of stuff. But I consider those kind of core CMS features. I mean, outside of WordPress, I think most CMSs support personalization and that sort of thing.
So you talked about the baseline being frictionless, and I've used that word before, and sometimes it works. But some marketing teams when onboarding to, I'm like less fields, easy sign up. I just need an email and a password, but they want full survey, blood samples, firstborn, every information that in the world, so they can then market to them.
Yeah.
How do you measure success of being frictionless?
That's tough. And I think that's more of a marketing. That's more marketing than portals, I guess. I think. So we created the customer onboarding for Palmer Gas. That was like a wizard of 6 pages with literally your social security number and stuff like that. So that's a bad example. But they needed that information before they could approve them as customers. I think more what you're talking about is kind of progressive forms, like that first time you ask for the simple things, the email and the name, the second time you ask for the title, and kind of progressively asking for more information as you give them more content and assets and things like that.